Because homeschool families can do it. They can absolutely homeschool high school and do it with confidence and peace. And a homeschool student can get into any college that a public or private school student could get. They can get so many scholarships. They can go into any career path that they want to. But there's questions that come with that process. And so I think while the family can do it, sometimes they need additional guidance and support. Or for some families, it's just you got this, you're doing the right thing. And for other families, it's a little bit more of, let me take that off your plate. Let me make the transcript for you so that you don't have to stress about this part of the process, so that you can focus on the other aspects of loving and caring for your student.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today I have a great conversation with Emily Eaton, founder of Education Next Steps. We talk about the many opportunities that homeschool students have to experience great success in their high school years as they prepare for their next steps beyond high school. We talk about relieving the sometimes overwhelming stress and pressure felt by both parents and students, and focus on the importance of embracing those special years of building relationship. Emily also shares her journey to finding scholarships that allowed her to go to college debt-free, and tips on how your students can do the same. Let's listen.
It was wonderful to be Emily as a little girl. I grew up in Miami, Florida. I have two wonderful parents, loving parents. In Miami, I was actually not homeschooled at first. I was in a private school for elementary years. And then we had life circumstances where my little sister was born. Her and I are 10 years apart, and we're actually really close. And I attribute homeschooling to that closeness. But when she was born, we were originally commuting about 45 minutes to go to private school every day. And it was really expensive and costs were increasing and rising. And so my family made a change and a pivot. And so we decided to try homeschooling in 5th grade. And we never looked back. We loved it so much. And I call 5th grade our trial year, where we just didn't really know what we were doing, because we made the decision to homeschool in August of 5th grade. So it was like, okay, let's homeschool, and we have to start right now. Okay, what are we even doing? How do we do this? My mom had a newborn, so it was like, okay, we have a newborn again and a 5th grader. What's homeschooling? And so I spent most of 5th grade just in front of a computer screen doing like more online type school. And then we changed our path and changed our process beyond that. But it was wonderful. It was such a fun experience growing up. And I'm sure we'll talk much more about that as well. But that was kind of my really early on years.
What did you do for entertainment, maybe extracurricular things when you were little?
Yeah, when I was little, like elementary school age, it was a lot of just playing with friends. I admit I watched a lot of TV shows and such like that. My favorite thing, though, was we had little kittens that were born in our yard quite often. And so I would go play with the kittens in our yard. And that was like my safe haven and one of my favorite things. And then moving into like middle school years, such like that, I started doing competitive gymnastics. My parents really emphasized if I wasn't going to be in a public private school, I needed to still have kind of like a PE exercise type of experience. And so I started doing gymnastics, and I fell in love with it. So I started off just taking classes and ended up competing in gymnastics. Starting at 11 is abnormal. Most people who start gymnastics start at like little 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
So I was certainly not like going to the Olympics by any means, but it was a fun hobby and extracurricular for me. And then when I went into high school, I got involved in a lot of different ways. We were involved in church all throughout, but then high school, I jumped into 4-H, which is really known for agriculture. But growing up in urban Miami, there is agriculture in Miami, but not the part of Miami that I was in. And so I was doing a lot more government, civic engagement, community service, leadership. I was really involved in something called Teen Court, where we actually got to be mock attorneys for real juvenile cases. And it was a community service opportunity
Mhm.
for us and really a redemption opportunity for the individuals going through the other side of the process in the program. So it was really neat. It was a lot of government, civics, engagement, community service was really my involvement.
Yeah, I think that 4-H people don't realize how much opportunity there is really there
Yeah,
to do so many different things. You can delve into almost any interest that you
it's
have
true.
through 4-H. It's kind of crazy. My kids were in 4-H when they were young, but it's kind of incredible. And so it sounds like you had a lot of good experiences once you started homeschooling, but when you were in 5th grade and you made the change, outside of like all of the changes and your family dynamic as far as having a new baby and all of that, what was the biggest shift to you that was different between your life going to school every day and then your life as you brought it home to home educate?
That's a really good question. I think when I was thinking about jumping into homeschool, friends was the biggest area that I was worried about just as a elementary school kid and having lots of friends and wondering, okay, what is this going to be like? We jumped into a co-op pretty quickly in
Mm,
Miami, which was really helpful for us. And just by God's timing, not by our decision or anything, my good friend from my elementary school actually jumped into homeschooling at the same time and joined that same co-op. And I don't actually think it was planned that we would all move at the same time to this new environment, but that's what we did. And it was really wonderful. I remember my very first day at the co-op, like the orientation day, and I remember sticking really close to my mom and not wanting to just meet anyone. I wasn't that outgoing at the time. And this girl came up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Tori. Do you want to be my friend?" And I was blown away by how kind and engaging and encouraging people were. And I don't know, I struggled a little bit with bullying and not like intense bullying in public private school, but it was challenging and girls can be mean in any environment, I think. And I
mm,
just found it to be so kind and welcoming and warm the second I stepped foot into that environment. So that was a big difference for
mm.
me. But then also, my family's always been really close knit, I think, but I really think homeschooling made us so much more close knit and
Yeah.
bonded. We were commuting and about an hour and a half every day, and I just sat in the back seat watching a little portable DVD player every day and
Mm.
was a really picky eater. So ate French fries for breakfast, which is just not good in any regard, but whatever, it was how I was. And to not have to do that drive, but to actually get to do quality time and get to bond with my mom. My dad was still working full time, so he wasn't at home during those daytime moments. He was in the evenings, but getting to
Mhm.
actually spend quality time with my mom and dive into scripture together and read the Bible together and help not, I wasn't the parent to my sister, but I was 10, 11, so help pour into my sister and
Yeah.
help continue to build her up. It was really wonderful. And all of us are super close now. And I think the fact that we got to spend so much quality time together where I was doing schoolwork at the computer or at the table, but my little sister Grace was playing right next to me or doing her coloring
Mm.
pages right next to me, or it wasn't this I'm in my own unit and she is in her own space. We were all doing life together was so special and so wonderful. So that was definitely a big change.
Yeah, and I think that that's such a natural family involvement when you have new children coming into the family and the older ones have an opportunity to pour into them and also grow up alongside of them. I think it nurtures
Yeah.
them and it educates the older ones on what family looks like for them, later on in life as well.
Right.
But that's amazing. So I know we'll get to some of the things later in our conversation about what you're focusing on now, but I think that a part of that story comes from your own journey through high school. So, can you share a little bit about what it was like for you during your high school years and what
Yeah.
you were focused on?
Absolutely. So a lot of those leadership community service pieces that I mentioned already was very involved in that. For me, 4-H wasn't just going to summer camps or going to service projects. It was leadership building. So I ended up running for state council and was the state secretary for Florida 4-H and got to plan events and plan service projects and lead hundreds of students. And it was so neat to get to be a part of that. And another area that was a really big focus for me, someone really early on in our high school journey, one of the homeschool moms at our co-op said to my mom that she should begin with the end in mind. And that phrase really stuck with us. And so it helped us think, okay, maybe not end like end of life, but although that's important, I'm a Christian, I think thinking about that is integral. But she was really meaning like end of high school, end of college, moving to career. What do you want to move toward, and then work backwards, because every student can go in so many different directions. And so for me, we said, okay, what is our end of homeschooling? Like, where do we want to end up? And I had decided I wanted to end up at a Florida college that was a Christian college. Those two things were really important to me. And so we knew, okay, that probably means expensive. So how do we make that affordable? And so my mom really instilled in me scholarship applications. We learned about College Prep Genius through FPEA pretty early on in our journey. And so test prep became one of my subjects. We just treated it as part of the curriculum. So I was doing SAT prep pretty much every day. I was testing from 10th grade on, pretty early on in my start, but then also applying for scholarships outside of testing, we treated as my job as well. And so applied to so many different scholarships. I couldn't even count how many scholarships I applied for, but I ended up earning $133,000 in scholarships. And so I was able to attend my dream university, which is Palm Beach Atlantic University, debt-free. One scholarship was so cool. We applied to it, and I don't think they'd ever had a homeschooler before. And I was blessed to get to receive it. And they gave out multiple. I wasn't the only applicant who received it. But typically what they did is they would show up at the student's high school with cupcakes and a big check and make a big spectacle about it. But I wasn't at a high school. I was at my house. And so I remember one day my mom told me, like, your dad's coming to check in on how you're doing with homeschool, which would be really abnormal. That wasn't our dynamic. And so I was like, what do you mean dad's coming to check in on my homeschool? That's weird. I don't know what you're talking about. And I remember her saying, like, don't you want to like put on a nicer top? I was in just like a t-shirt and my hair was a mess. And I was like, why? It's just dad. He's just coming. What's the big deal? And someone knocked on the door and mom was like, can't you get it, Emily? Which was kind of also abnormal. I was like, sure, normally I just go do my school and you get the door, but okay, what? No problem. I'll go get the door. Absolutely. And there were 4 women outside with a big check and balloons and cupcakes, and it was a huge thing. And they let me know I won the scholarship. So it was crazy, but it was really, really fun. I'll never forget it.
That's really cool. And so tell me a little bit about like how it was different for you with like graduation and moving into college. Did you have all of those scholarships in place when you were ready to go freshman year?
Yeah, I continued to apply for scholarships when I was at PBA. I don't remember exactly. Most of the scholarships I got were going into college. So I did get some when I was still at college, but most were going in. Graduation was wonderful. I wouldn't trade how it was for anything. I did 2 graduations. I did one through FPEA, and then I did one through our local co-op, which were both radically different experiences, and I loved both equally. The one at co-op was me and 5 other students who were graduating, and we each got to give like a 2-minute speech and thank our families and share what we were doing, which was really special and wonderful. And then FPEA was hundreds of students, but I had friends from all over the state who were homeschooled from 4-H. So I had 4-H friends and co-op friends all graduating, all walking together. I remember all the colors of the graduation caps and gowns and just how special and diverse that felt, because everyone's homeschool journey is so special and diverse. And then I remember they had different people playing music who were graduates, and 2 of my friends were actually some of the ones who got to do music that year. And it was just so neat, incredible. Everyone coming together. So I loved both, and I'm so grateful that I did both.
That's really cool. I think you're the first person that I've interviewed on the podcast that graduated from FPEA. So that is really fun. Interesting. It is. And, and it is. I had my son did 2 graduations, kind of like what you're talking about. And they're unique and different and bring different benefits for each one. But FPA graduation is interesting because I think that the students who graduate there walk away feeling like it was more personal than they thought it would be. And
Yeah,
so that's why I love it so much, honestly.
it's really special. And then you
Yeah.
asked about what it was like transitioning to college. And I don't think I
Yeah.
answered that question. I think anyone's transition to college, whether that's homeschool background, public, private school, I don't think it matters. I think it's a change, and change is hard. I now
Mm,
teach college freshmen at Palm Beach Atlantic, and I've seen some who transition so easily and others who struggle, whether that's socially or academically or whatever. And so for me, academically, I did not feel like it was a hard switch. I felt like I was really prepared well from homeschooling. I did do a little bit of dual enrollment when I was in high school, but not a lot, about 12
mhm.
credits, so 4 classes or so, which I think was helpful, but not integral to my transition and journey to college. But I
Right.
think that homeschooling, where you're, at least for how it was for me, you're self-managing, you're learning how to handle your time, and those are all skills that are needed for college. And so that was really really helpful for me academically. I also tend to be a very studious person, so that was a good jump for me. I think moving away from family wise, I lived on campus, we were in Miami, so it was about an hour and a half away, which isn't that far, but when I'm as close to my family as I am, that felt big, and so that was difficult for me at first. God has wonderful plans, and my family actually ended up following me north, not because of me. They just wanted to move out of Miami. So they moved to
Yeah.
about 30 minutes from the campus. And so then I got to see them a little bit more often. But I'm a big proponent of living on campus, especially coming from a homeschool background, because of how it helped me. I think it helped
Mhm.
me grow in terms of my own independence and my own journey, and really set me up well for my adult life too. So it was a transition, it
Yeah.
was challenging, but it, I think, served me really well.
That's really cool. And I know that you went on from your education to working at Palm Beach Atlantic University. Can you tell me a little bit about that experience or like how that has impacted where
Sure.
you are today, even?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was at PBA, I studied management and I did a minor in ministry. And I spent probably a year or two of my journey just trying to discern, how do these things fit together? How could I do business and ministry? Do they even fit and match? And that's its own story in itself, how I got to just
Mhm.
sifting through all of that. But I ended up landing on the realization that yes, they can fit. And the way that I wanted to have them fit was, I have skills in business, but I have a heart for helping other people. And so I really wanted to use business skills to help people. And at the time, I felt like admissions was the best fit for that for me. And so I ended up starting working at PBA's admissions office a week after graduation from college. I took a 1 week vacation, and then I came back and started on Monday. And I worked in the admissions office for 6 years, which was so fun and wonderful. And I really felt like I got to help a lot of families navigate the college admissions process. And that process can be stressful and overwhelming. And so I got to be someone of peace and calm and information to help them in that journey. But there is a sales component to an admissions office. And so I felt like I got to add in my business hat. And I was really involved in their database and managing different strategy and marketing and such like that, which was really special. But that was a really wonderful job and opportunity for me. Within my first month in the job, the leadership of the team started to realize that I have a heart and a background for homeschooling. And my first college fair headed to recruit students was actually FPEA. So it was really neat to then have like a full circle of graduated a couple years ago. My family's still been going, and now I get to have a booth that I'm manning at FPEA, which was wonderful and
Right.
fun. And after that, they said, I think we actually need a homeschool liaison where we're helping the homeschool families specifically navigate it, because homeschool families tend to have slightly different questions navigating college admissions process, of like needing to even make a transcript and things like that. How do credits
Right.
transfer? How do they work? All of the things. And so I got to be the homeschool liaison. And so I was working specifically with homeschool families, helping them navigate the PBA admissions journey, which was so incredible and fun. And then about 3 or 4 years into the job, I ended up being the director of undergraduate admissions. So I got to not so much work with the incoming students, but oversee the team of counselors who was working with who was incoming students. I got to build out the application, build out scholarship applications and pages, work with the student team, oversee the marketing and strategy. And so it was a lot of different hats that I've gotten to wear in the college admissions process, from going through it myself to working with families navigate through it to overseeing the process. And I ended up stepping out of admissions about 2 years ago. Now I'm a full-time professor at PBA. I'm an instructor of management. And so I've taught freshmen through senior students all sorts of management business skills, but I've also taught business professionalism classes where we learn about resumes and interviews and career exploration. I've taught first-year experience classes where we learn study skills, time management, note-taking, and I've tried to bring some of those aspects into the other venture that I do, which is leading Education Next Steps, where I'm an academic coach to homeschool students to help them navigate all these things, whether that's career exploration, college process and planning, high school transcripts, dual enrollment, or time management study skills, such like that.
And we'll be right back. What if this summer did more than just fill your team's time? What if it played a foundational role in who they're becoming? At Excel Summer Leadership Camp, students step into a transformational adventure experience designed to help them discover their calling, discern what truly matters, and learn how to live it out with wisdom and courage. Through outdoor adventure like camping, whitewater rafting, and rock climbing, intentional community, and Christ-centered mentorship, Excel Summer Leadership Camp equips young adults to grow in their leadership, their character, and their faith. Right now, you can get $100 off your next camp session with code FPEA 2026. Learn more and apply today at theexcelcamp.org. And now, back to the show. What prompted you to start Education Next Steps?
Yeah, I felt like I talked to so many homeschool families who, as they navigated elementary and middle school ages, they felt peace and confidence and ready to go for homeschooling. But the second it hit high school, there seemed to be this cloud of stress over them of, can we do this? Do we need to just put them in a school? How are we sure they're going to graduate? Are they going to get into college? Are they going to get a job? How is this going to go? And I felt like God has kind of put lots of dots in my path that align with those questions and those journeys, from my own experiences to helping families in college admissions to my job as an instructor. And so I really wanted to bridge that gap and kind of give peace, give peace along that journey.
Yeah.
And so I think I saw a need more than anything, because homeschool families can do it. They can absolutely homeschool high school and do it with confidence and peace. And a homeschool student can get into any college that a public or private school student could get. They can get so many scholarships. They can go into any career path that they want to. But there's questions that come with that process. And so I think while the family can do it, sometimes they need additional guidance and support. Or for some families, it's just you got this, you're doing the right thing. And for other families, it's a little bit more of, let me take that off your plate. Let me make the transcript for you so that you don't have to stress about this part of the process, so that you can focus on the other aspects of loving and caring for your student. Or maybe your student, you've said all the right things to them and it's just not getting through. So you need another person to come and say some of the same things, maybe some new things. Like, for instance, I am meeting with a client even this week where mom and dad have tried to talk to student about a few different career explorations, next steps, and they think he just needs a new voice. And so I'm going to get to share some of the same things, but also some new aspects of what are career options we could look into, what are next steps that we could take. So really wanting to help families walk through that process through one-on-one coaching. And then I also just started a podcast called Homeschool Next Steps to help families where maybe they're not ready to jump into coaching, or maybe they don't necessarily feel like they need coaching, but they want some information, some support. So providing some of those tips through the podcast as well.
Yeah, I know with homeschooling, and especially over the last couple of years, there have been a lot of families who have exited public school, private school, started to homeschool, and some of them even begin, middle of high school. Some do just their senior year. I mean, there's a
Yeah.
lot of differences in everybody's journey as they're homeschooling. But one of my questions to you would be, I think when you started and you started your high school journey, the advice that you got, is to keep the end in mind, what the end game was. And it gave you years to prepare. But often you see students who come to us and they're not ready. They haven't been preparing. Nobody has really advised them thus far, or they just didn't know what to do and they've just been making it through high school.
Yeah.
How do you help someone who's either in their senior year or just exiting high school to take some of the information that you can give them and help them navigate still trying to get these scholarships and trying to be, somewhat prepared without a long runway to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you're expressing, I see completely. I have some clients who come to me in the middle of senior year. They've already been accepted to school. They're just trying to afford it. I've had others who come to me at the start of senior year. They've done a runway of college, of not college, I'm sorry, of high school, of homeschool, and now they're just applying to college. And then I do also have those clients who come to me in eighth grade. They're planning for high school or early high school. They're trying to get a longer roadmap. So there's people in every bucket. Absolutely.
Mhm.
For the family who is further down the runway, they're in their senior year at some point in time. I think early or end of senior year sometimes have similarities. It depends on where they're already at in the process for where I would jump in, but I think there's always something that we can look into because resources are available. Sometimes families just don't know. And
Mhm.
so something that I always try to do is see where they're currently at. Is the student planning college or planning not college? Because both are valid options. They just have different steps forward depending on what that looks like. I would say most of the families I work with are college bound. And so for the families that are college bound, if they are thinking about what school should they be looking into, I love getting to know that family and hear what are values they have for colleges to start looking into them, start applying, start finding what's the right fit. For a student who really doesn't know what they want to do yet, I always start with a career assessment to help look into what are potential career options. Why might that be a good fit for you? What level of education would you even need to pursue that career option? And then once we have those information a little bit further down the road, I'm looking at what are scholarships that university provides. What are scholarships that you might be eligible for, whether that's need-based aid or not need-based aid from Florida government, from US government. What outside scholarships are still available? My biggest tip for anyone looking for scholarships is to look local. There are scholarships in most counties in Florida, at least, and nationwide too, I'm sure, but most of my clients right now are from Florida. And so looking to see what scholarships do they have locally, because that's just a smaller applicant pool. So if there's less people applying, that's much better.
Mhm.
And a lot of those scholarships don't open up until a student's senior year. And so as someone who's coming to me in senior year, there's tons of scholarships available still to look into. But even when a student's already at college, there are more scholarships available too. So we can still look into more resources there as well. In many cases, more scholarships open up or additional scholarships open up for that student at the university they're attending. If they're not looking at college, they're looking career focused, I'm jumping a little bit more into, can we find job shadowing opportunities? Can we work on a resume for you? Resume and interview skills, I think, are a good fit for either group. But there's absolutely aspects we can look into, whether they have a long roadmap ahead or a shorter roadmap ahead. It's just more about let's jump into the road so that we
Yeah.
aren't just wandering around it saying, what do we do first? Where do we head? Let's put one foot in front of the other and jump in where we can, essentially.
Yeah. And I think that that's such wise advice because there are a lot of families or students who they don't even really know what they want to do until they're in
Right.
their senior year. Some don't even know till after their senior year, which is
Yeah.
absolutely okay and
Yes.
normal not to know what your whole life is going to look like
Oh,
when you're
yeah.
17
The
years old.
average college student changes their major 3 times.
Yeah.
So even if we do that career assessment and they say, like, I want to be blah, 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 cool, we can run in that way. But we also are going to make like plans that we can go in a new route if we need to. And typically you don't see someone going from like I mean, sometimes you do, but I don't think it's as common to go from, I want to be a surgeon to actually, I just want to be a musician, because those are very
Yeah.
different paths, right? And so I think if we know what general direction are you probably heading in, that can be helpful. But yeah, we're changing our mind. I've changed my mind. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
We are continually growing people. And so we have
Right.
new things that are exciting to us.
Well, I think that like the services that you're offering are really like truly needed and helpful for students and for parents. I think sometimes, especially when you're walking this path for the first time, it can
Right.
be very confusing and very like, what in the world is this going to look like? Because a lot of the families that, have the homeschooling parents, they were not homeschooled. A lot of them
Right.
at this point, I mean, we're going to move into an era, I think, where there are going to be more who were homeschool graduates. But, we still have a lot now. They were traditional school. They went all the traditional routes. That's what they know and understand. And navigating some of the process from the homeschool side can be confusing at times, or at least intimidating, right? And
Yeah.
so I think that what you're doing is really a great service. And I'm glad that we have families who are able to connect with you through FPEA. But
Thank you. Me
what
too.
one piece, like as we're like wrapping up, what would be like your one thought, piece of advice to the student, not necessarily the parent, about
Sure.
their future beyond high school?
Yeah. I heard it once in college that someone was sharing, it was from the career development office, and they were just kind of explaining like our career or our path. How do we figure that out essentially? And they described it as as you go through life, there are dots that are put in your path. And these are different experiences that you've had. And as you're walking the path of life, you don't really understand how those dots make sense. It's
Mm.
like you're zoomed in too far and the dots just look like a mess. But as you zoom out and you can connect those dots, it makes this beautiful picture. And that imagery really stuck with me. And so I would encourage the student that we might not have all the dots yet. We might not have all of that in place, or we might not just be able to see all the dots yet. But God is faithful and He is with you, and He is making that picture beautiful. I didn't know that this was the path that God had for me, but I'm so grateful that it is. I didn't realize homeschooling has been so important to me in so many ways, but I didn't know that I would not only hope to homeschool my kids once I have kids, but I'd be helping homeschool families. I didn't know that I'd step into college admissions. I didn't go to PBA saying like, I hope to be a college admissions counselor, but I did, and I loved it. And I can look back and I can see, oh, all these dots led me here. It led me to get to help homeschool families through their journey. And so for that student who they're in the trenches, they're in high school, they're maybe in middle school, they're stressed about the future, there's a lot of pressure on students to figure out, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? I mean, we're asked that question from we're 5 years old. What do you want
Yeah.
to be when you grow up? And that's scary and daunting. And our answer continues to change. But we just got to keep putting one foot in front of the other, and those dots will be put in place, and eventually we'll see the beautiful picture and we'll end up in the right spot. But we have to keep walking and keep putting one step in front of the other. So I think that decision paralysis of just getting stuck is not helpful. Putting one foot in front of the other, you'll end up in a good spot, and they have family and mentors and people who are in their corner helping them. So long answer, but the
Yeah.
summary is,
Okay.
you got this. God is faithful.
Yeah, good answer. Now the other question is, what would you say to the parent to help them pull back on the pressure and the stress that they feel to help make the transition smoother for their students,
Yeah.
and less stressful for everybody?
Yeah, I would first off encourage them and say they're probably doing great. I don't know them personally yet. I would love to meet with them, but these families that I meet with and talk to that come to me in a panic and say like, I don't know what to do, they're doing so much better than they think they are. So you're doing great is the first thing I would say. But secondly, I would say similar advice, one foot in front of the other. What's the next step we can do in this process? What's the next step we can do after that? And there are resources available and there's support available. And so I would love to be a resource and a help to them if that would be helpful, whether that's through the podcast or through coaching. But regardless, putting one foot in front of the other, what's the next thing we can do? You don't have to have the 10-year plan mapped out right this second. What's tomorrow's plan?
Yeah, that's great advice, because we do get caught up sometimes in looking so far ahead that we forget where
Right.
we are, and the focus that needs to be on those moments and the value of that time, and not rushing it. And being the mom that has graduated all of my kids, like, not rushing the time was probably the best decision that I made,
Yeah.
And so I think that that's important too.
I was to say, I remember I told a family to enjoy the process, and they kind of looked at me funny, like, what do you mean, enjoy the high school years? There's so much we have to do. And sure, there's lots of steps, but what a wonderful time and what a sweet blessing it is for homeschool families to get to be a part of their students' journey throughout all the years, but specifically the high school years. I look back with such fondness when I think about how involved my parents were in my life, and not just in school planning and college planning, but just in talking. There's so
Mhm.
much growing up that happens in high school years, but also a lot of just confusion and questions, and life is funny. And so the fact that I had my parents in my corner helping me through it and as people to talk to, I loved it. And I hope they did too. I'm sure they did.
I'm
But
sure.
I would encourage the families to enjoy the journey because it's a really precious and special time.
It is. I totally agree. Totally agree with that. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing with us about education next steps. And I hope that there will be families who will connect with you, because not only is your service and what you have as resources very valuable, but your heart for what you're doing is so important and special too. And I think that it just means so much more when it comes from somebody who's really walked through this journey and experienced it, and then can talk about it and share and help others. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity to be on this podcast and for the time. I'm so grateful.
Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida, or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at fpea.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.